All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel here. I've got an update, and I know it's been a while. I haven't been around. I've just been so incredibly busy. Haven't had a chance to do videos. I've just been working, trying to protect my clients and traveling all over the state. And today I spent all day at the Marvin Lewis Guy trial here in Bell County. For those of you that don't know about this guy, first of all, go ahead and Google it and look it up. Already, I think it's been a travesty of justice, and we don't even know what the jury is going to come back with once this trial is over. But again, today's day one. And so I wanted to give you a sort of a synopsis or a summary of today's testimony and kind of what happened today, and some of my thoughts about what is going on today in the court. So almost 10 years ago, May 14th, 2014, officers from the Killeen Police Department executed a no-knock raid, a no-knock warrant on the home of Marvin Lewis Guy in Killeen, Texas. Now, supposedly it was a narcotics warrant, and it was executed at about 5:40 in the morning, again on May 14th, 2014. And it isn't until today that Marvin got his first day in court. Now, of course, last week was voir dire and choosing the jury and all that, but today was the first day of the trial. And after 10 years, 9.5 years, he's finally got his day in court. And so what today was essentially the opening statements. This is in the 27th District Court in Bell County, Texas. Judge Gant is or Gant, I think is how it says it. It was the judge. The case was called at 8:45. A bunch of officers were sworn in today, and by gosh, they definitely wanted to look absolutely heroic in their dress uniforms with all their little badges and medals, I guess kind of the way soldiers do. But I'm not going to hold that against them or make any assumptions about that, because in the military, if we had to go to court, we also had to wear our Class A's, which does include our military ribbons and stuff like that as well. So a jury was chosen last week, and there are 16 people on the jury, 12 regulars, and then 4 alternates. And I will tell you that already one of the jurors was excused today. And I don't know why they took everybody out of the courtroom, but generally that happens when a juror is caught doing or saying something that is either in violation of the judge's orders and rules, or demonstrates an incredible bias that would negate a fair trial. And so what likely happened, although again, I have no idea, is that this juror probably wrote something on Facebook or sent something to a friend that said, I don't care what the evidence shows, Marvin is guilty, or I don't care what the evidence shows, Marvin is innocent. Okay. It's probably something along those lines of just making a statement that you're not going to give either side a fair trial. The jury is made up of one black female, one black male, what I judge to be a Hispanic male, what I judge to be an Asian male, a Hispanic female, 8 white females, and 3 white males. So you've got a total of 11 out of the 12-person jury there. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I didn't know which 4 were the alternates, although I think I do now. So the alternates, I believe, were 3 women and a black male out of all of those. 3 white women and a black male. The black male is now a part of the 12-person jury. One of the white females was the one that was taken out. Now, why do I bring that up? Why am I talking about male, female, race and all that? Excuse me, skin color. Marvin Guy is a black man. and he's charged with the murder of a police officer. During this no-knock raid back in 2014, Marvin it was obviously at 5:40 in the morning, and Marvin was asleep in his bedroom. All of a sudden, all he hears is windows crashing down and figures outside his windows. So he opens fire and ends up killing one officer and injuring, I think, 2 others, if I'm not mistaken. So he's being charged with capital murder as well as attempted murder. And all because police officers, despite knowing that Marvin was on a schedule, decided to do a no-knock raid instead of just grabbing him during his regular routine. And that cost, unfortunately, the life of a Killeen police officer, Dinwiddie. Chuck Dinwiddie was his name. All right, so the case was called. Instructions were read to the jurors. All of the witnesses were sworn in, and they were told that the rule has been invoked, which means that when the rule is invoked, you're not allowed to be present in the courtroom to watch the trial. You can't talk to other witnesses or other people about the case because you're not allowed to you're not supposed to talk about your testimony with other potential witnesses. And so they call it invoking the rule. And of course, the indictment was read. And after the indictment was read, Marvin Guy pled not guilty, as I believe he should. So I'll say up front, I think, and this is only knowing the little things I've been able to get from personal conversations with Marvin, through stories that have been released, through public information. I believe it was a clear-cut case of self-defense. I don't think this is murder. A man thought that he was having his home broken into, and he responded like anybody would when somebody's breaking into their house. And I'll talk a little bit about that today from some of the witnesses. So Fred Burns is the prosecutor, and John Evans is the defense attorney, the main defense attorney, at least so far. And, you know, I was a little surprised by Mr. Burns's opening statement, because I think they put all their eggs into a basket with holes in it. And, you know, it's funny because there's this Fortnite emote where a guy's picking up an egg and he's sticking it in his basket, but it falls through the basket, and he sees it again and he picks it up. It's kind of like this never-ending loop of putting an egg into a basket with holes in it. Because he mentions that law enforcement officers on May 14th, 2014, were executing a lawful search warrant for narcotics, and it was based on probable cause. So the tactic of no-knock warrants, according to Mr. Burns, was, of course, it's to increase safety, because warrants are inherently dangerous. So it's a tactic to increase safety in an inherently dangerous situation. I don't know about you, but I would think it would be more dangerous to break into someone's home in the pre-dawn hours when it's still dark outside in a high crime area. And yes, the officers admitted that this was a high crime area, than just watching a guy, surveilling him, and then nabbing him while he's out in his car or whatever, right? I mean, look, in this case, this no-knock raid that's supposed to make it somehow safer for officers ended up with a dead and 2 wounded officers. Then this is where I think the state is really hurting itself. They are claiming, and in his opening statement, Mr. Burns said that Marvin Lewis Guy created an ambush. Hey, what's up, 357? Hey, everybody. By the way, welcome, everybody. That these officers were walking into an ambush. Now, this is, first of all, just listening to it is laughable if it weren't so serious, just on its face. But then when you get into some of the testimony, which I'll talk about as I go through here, this idea of an ambush just doesn't make any sense. If you're going to claim there's an ambush, then here's what you're saying. If you're saying that Marvin Lewis Guy ambushed Killeen Police Department when they executed this no-knock raid, aren't you really saying that there was an officer or officers or someone in KPD that was leaking information to Marvin Lewis Guy who, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And then when you start listening to the testimony of other people today, it makes even less sense. But I'll get into that. That seems to be the theme of the prosecution, is the reason he should be found guilty of capital murder is because he ambushed these officers, okay? Because there was a lazy boy lounger that was blocking the door that they were trying to kick in with the battering ram. So they tried to kick in the door with the battering ram. The door would not open because there was this lazy boy recliner that was up against it. And so they ended up having to go apparently to a second entry around back. He didn't really go into too much detail there. But they did a simultaneous raid on the front door, the bedroom window, and Marvin's car. So they busted out his window, busted down his door, and busted out his windows in his car, which I also don't understand, because you can see into the car that there's nobody in there. Anyway, there it is. So then he says that shots were fired as the window was raked. So officers breached the window with their little tool. He was civilian. This was civilian. This happened in 2014 in Killeen. So that's probably why you might not have heard about it. It's a really old case. And this guy's languished in jail for the last 9.5 years. So even if he's found innocent, he was already sentenced to 9.5 years, regardless of how the jury finds today. He's already been sentenced to 9.5 years, just because that's how long he's been sitting in jail with such a high. He's got like a $4 million bond. All right. So then the state claims that apparently Marvin Lewis Guy, and these are my words, is some sort of Rambo marksman genius shot, and is so in tune with his, as soon as he's woken up, and I guess we don't know that yet because they don't know whether Marvin Guy, they're trying to essentially say that Marvin Guy was sitting in wait. He was lying in wait, just waiting for the moment to start shooting, right? And he was aiming and everything, because the 3 shots that hit were in the head, or they were either above the body armor or below the body armor. And that shows that this was somehow, targeted. Now, keep in mind, 3 shots hit somebody, but 9 shots were fired. So if this guy is such a marksman and he knows what he's doing, that he's able to hit headshots and below the belt shots where there's no body armor, as if that's the way he was aiming, but he only hit 33% of his targets. I guess that's a little bit better than the police, and that's proven. That's proven because the hit ratio for law enforcement was 0%. They fired 35 to 40 rounds, according to Mr. Burns, the prosecutor today. Police fired 35 to 40 rounds and hit nothing. Nothing. Marvin Guy fired 9 rounds from a 9mm handgun, and 3 of his 9 rounds hit, 1 causing death and 2 causing injury, apparently. And of course, there's no body-worn camera at the time. They didn't have any body-worn camera. Go figure. Even if they did, it probably would have been lost, I'm sure. You know how those things work. And that was the opening statement. Essentially, what the prosecutors are saying is that Marvin Guy planned this entire thing. He knew that they were going to raid him. They knew that it was going to be on that day. Apparently, the girlfriend that was in the apartment is going to testify that Marvin generally never put the lounger there. So why did he put the lounger there? Now, I don't know what the defense argument is going to be. I don't have any inside information on this case. Okay, folks, I'm giving you this summary based on my observations as someone sitting in the audience. I have, other than my conversations with Marvin Guy personally, I have no inside information about what the defense is going to do. I haven't spoken with the defense attorney. I did at one point make myself available if you needed help with research or something, but they never took me up on that. I'm kind of glad because I've been busy. But so I have no inside information from the defense team, from the legal team at all whatsoever. But what I think they're going to do is try to claim they're using this girlfriend, and they're going to claim that, well, she's going to testify that he never put a recliner there. That was the first time she'd ever seen him put a recliner in front of the door, the front door. Well, guess what? Here's what I think the defense is going to come back with. There was actually in that exact apartment complex, and it's a fourplex, okay? So there's 4 apartments here. There was a robbery or a burglary, excuse me. There was a burglary the night prior to that. Keep in mind, this is a high crime area, and that apartment fourplex had been targeted for a burglary. So yeah, maybe he's worried that there's going to be another break-in, and so he's going to block his door to prevent the guy from coming into his apartment. All right. So the defense gets up, gives their opening statement, says they're going to expose a lot of mistakes made by Killeen PD. And believe me, there were a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to go over some of these and give you some of my opinions about that. There was chaos on the night. Oh, I'm sorry. I said May 14th. It's May 9th, 2014. May 9th, 2014. Okay. Not May 14th. This happened at 5:40 in the morning. It's dark outside. They've already shown video from dash cams of the officers. And yes, it's pitch black outside. Okay. It's pitch black. Oh, this was the other thing. And this is going to come into play later. The prosecutor said that, oh my gosh, Marvin should have seen the officers. He should have known that they were officers because there was a light right up there that illuminated everything, right? And so he should have known. He should have known that these were officers. It was clear as day that they were officers. And never mind the fact that the officers were dressed in all black with their faces covered. And never mind that the officers were also dressed in camouflage. Forget all of that. It was bright outside, okay? Despite it being dark, there was a light that illuminated everything. So Marvin should have known better. Never mind his blinds were closed until someone was breaking in, okay? The light that was outside of his unit was actually broken, by the way. So there's only a light on the upstairs unit. There's not a light in the downstairs unit. There's not a light above Marvin Lewis Guy's room on the apartment complex. The only light that is on this building is on the upstairs platform for the 2 upstairs apartments. And Marvin's on the lower right as you're looking at this thing. Let's see. The state, and he makes a very good case that he says, the state's going to make every action of Marvin Guy sinister. And that's what they did in the opening statement, is he had a recliner and he never put the recliner there. Oh, so he planned this attack. He had a 9mm and a 45. There was a 45 caliber under his bed, under his pillow in his apartment. here's my thoughts. If he's trying, okay, for you and my watching viewing audience here, if you had two guns on you and someone's breaking into your house, both of them are accessible, easily accessible. Like if I have them right here on my desk, I've got a 9mm and I've got a 45 caliber. Both of them carry 9 rounds, which seems to be the case in here. And someone's breaking into your house, which gun are you going to pick up as a gun owner? I mean, if your intent is to kill people and you're planning an ambush, which caliber round do you start with? Do you start with a 45 caliber or do you start with a 9mm? I know what I'm going to do. Of course, 45 is my go-to anyway, but I also carry a 9mm as a backup. But I'm not going to grab a 9mm if my intent is to kill people. Now, if I'm surprised and I think someone's breaking into my house, I'm going to grab the nearest gun that's next to me. If I don't have my wits about me and time is of the essence and I just need to grab a gun, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a 22, I'm grabbing a gun, right? And I'm going to start shooting. But the prosecution is trying to say that he planned this, that he ambushed these police officers, yet despite the fact, and they also tried to make it sound as if he had his own little like fighting position because there was so much crap on his bed that there's no way he was laying in the bed at all. And there's this one little area that was cleared out, almost like he was making a nest in which he could ambush these officers. And yet in his ambush and in his incredible foresight and his ability to understand when a raid is going to happen, at what time, yet somehow he picked up this 9mm as his go-to gun. Not buying it. Okay. Not buying it. The defense goes on. He says of all nights, he knew what was going to happen that night. And here's what you're going to find out. This is what the defense says. You know what you're not going to hear? You're not going to hear any evidence of an officer tipping off Marvin Lewis Guy. Now, if he's planning an ambush, how does he know when SWAT is planning to execute their warrant unless somebody rats out to him? So I think the state is going to have a hard time backing that claim up that there was an ambush if they aren't able to prove that somehow Marvin had individual knowledge of the exact time, date, and locations that the raid was going to take place. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So it was a pretty good defense. You know, here's the thing about defense arguments. When you're up there giving an opening statement, you don't want to make too many promises. You don't want to really lay out your case, because if something happens during your case and you made a claim at the beginning, and maybe the course of the case goes differently than you anticipated, because maybe the prosecutors don't bring in evidence that you were expecting to bring in, or it just didn't lay, maybe some of the witnesses that you thought were going to testify about something testified about something else, right? So when you give your opening statement, you don't want to give away too much, because then at the end, you're just going to have the prosecutor rip holes in. Well, the defense attorney said this, this, and this, but did you see any of that evidence? No. So you lay out your best case. And I think he did a good job of essentially just responding to the prosecutor's opening statement. Now, at this time, yes, no-knocks were still legal, and they still are legal under state law in Texas. However, after this incident, they are now banned in Killeen. Killeen police officers are not allowed to do no-knock warrants. So the first, let's get into the witnesses today, okay? And this is where we're going to start. I'm going to start doing some analysis based on the testimony that was given today and the opening statements, and kind of weigh those, okay? So Bobby Clemens, he's a KPD officer. He was essentially an officer. He really had nothing to do with this case. His testimony was solely there because he provides a little bit of context into the initial stages of the raid. For example, he was sitting at I believe it was a Sefco. He's sitting at a gas station, okay, and he noticed that there's an ambulance across the street, and it's just sitting there as if it's staging. Well, come to find out, this ambulance is staging. It's staging for this warrant in anticipation of injuries, shots fired, things like that. But that was part of his testimony, was that, yes, he noticed that there's an ambulance literally across the street from where he was. He took a call. When he took this call for a person not breathing, completely unrelated, he ended up driving down the same street. Now, he didn't know where the raid was. He had no idea. Now, he had gotten a tip that there was supposed to be a warrant being served that morning, but he didn't know where. And so when he saw the ambulance, he kind of was like, oh, okay, maybe that's for that search. But he didn't know where the search was. He didn't know where the warrant was being executed. But it just so happens that when he's going to his call, he takes a street, the exact same street that Marvin Guy lived on and where they were executing the warrant. So what his dash cam shows is the staged ambulance and the smoke as he's passing by Marvin's apartment where they're actually doing the raid. And there's smoke because they fired a flashbang, and flashbangs create a loud noise, a loud flash to disorient your sight and sound, and then smoke to disorient your sight as well, so that you can't see anything. All right. But he testified that he couldn't make out any of the people. He just saw moving people, right? Moving shadows. But he didn't exactly look in that direction. But what's interesting here, and we go back to this idea of an ambush. That seems to be the central theme of the state's argument against Marvin Guy. But yet the first witness that they bring up for the state is an officer who says he had no idea where the raid was or even when it was supposed to happen. He just knew that there was supposed to be a raid that morning. So KPD officers don't know when the raid is, but somehow Marvin Guy was able to figure it out. I'm not buying it. I think, and even though that's not what the purpose of the first witness was, what I got out of that first witness was, wait a minute, you've got a cop here that drove past the scene, and he's like, he didn't even know that that's where the raid was going to take place. And he had the potential of actually ruining the surprise element of a no-knock raid because he was not informed, and he ended up going down that same street with his lights and sirens on. Had he gone down that street maybe 2 or 3 minutes earlier, it could have completely destroyed the element of surprise because he had no idea that's where the raid was taking place. But yet Marvin Lewis Guy did, and was able to plan an entire ambush, right? So I think the first witness, even though it probably wasn't intentional, completely destroyed just right off the bat this idea of an ambush. Now, maybe I'm just thinking like a defense attorney. Maybe the jury doesn't pick up on that. And I don't know if the defense attorneys are going to pick up on that, maybe in their closing statement or in their defense. But that's what I got out of it was you just destroyed this whole idea. You have an officer that says he doesn't know anything about a raid. All right. And that's what his was. Oh, and one of the other things he testified was that the street was dark and that the house was dark. So that kind of underscores this claim that, you've got this light on this apartment that's illuminating all these officers that are all stacked up outside the door, outside the apartment. All right. The defense brought up during this testimony as well that the officer, as he drove by, he couldn't make out who the shadows were. He couldn't make out what they were wearing. And then he also brought out that the whole purpose of a flashbang grenade is to disorient the senses, right? And so when you've got a guy who his house is allegedly being broken into, and then you add the disorientation of a flashbang grenade, and he starts shooting. He doesn't know what he's shooting at. And the officer even admitted that it was a dark street and a flashbang is designed to disorient people. Well, if a person's disoriented, how can he know what he's shooting at? So anyway, the next witness was David Cole, another KPD officer. His job during this raid was to essentially block traffic. That was his sole purpose, and also to make sure that none of the suspects escaped from behind the building through a field that he was monitoring. So he was supposed to, on the west side of the street, Circle M, in Killeen. So on the west side where Circle M and the highway meet, he was supposed to block traffic off right there as soon as the raid started. And he says, two sets of gunfire. And then at one point he goes, and once the raid is kicked off and I guess shots are fired, he immediately takes his vehicle, goes to the apartment, and parks his vehicle so that his lights are on the apartment. But wait a minute. Why would you have to illuminate the apartment? In his opening statement, the outside of the apartment, in the opening statement, the prosecutor said it was bright as day nearly. There's this light out there that's perfectly shining on these on these police officers who are 12 feet away, 12 feet away, right? So why would the officer need to go and illuminate the outside of the building? And he's shining his light into. Now, here's what I noticed when they're showing this video. The prosecutor says that Marvin Guy should have been able to, and probably did, clearly see that these were officers outside the window, right? Yet, when they did the, it's called the break and rake, break and rake. You break the window and you rake out the blinds with this little tool. It's a B&R tool. We call it break and rake, or they call it break and rake. I say in the, remember, I'm prior federal law enforcement, even though I didn't do this kind of stuff. But you break the window with this tool, and then it's got a little edge on it that you can rake down and pull out blinds so that you clear the window. Well, when this officer pulls up after this break and rake has already happened, there's still a bunch of blinds there. It's a mess. You can't see out of that. I don't think you could see out of that. Let's see. So the Marvin Lewis guy had no light above his light. The only light is upstairs. That's an upstairs, and then there's a wall. So picture this fourplex, okay? You've got a fourplex. They're identical sides. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do something here real quick. And if I'd have remembered this, I would have brought it up. I would have brought it up and had it set up, because that was my intention when I was driving here. Let me find that. I'm sorry about this. I should have been a little more prepared here. Let me get the correct address of the property. I know I wrote it down somewhere. I think I have it in my head, but I'm not sure. Well, let's just do it this way. I'm gonna guess and see if I can remember. There it is. All right, I'm gonna do a street view here, and I'm gonna share this. All right, I need to go to no, not that one. So okay, I did get the right address here. All right, so I may or may not. Let me share the screen here for you. There we go. Allow. Let me do this here. All right. Let me get down to, let's see here. Can I go down this way? Yes. Okay. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe this is the house. Okay. I'm not sure. I believe this is the house. All right. Either way, you can see all of these apartments are the same. You know, they're mirror images of each other. Okay. So this right here is Marvin would be. Now, if this is the right apartment, this is Marvin's apartment. And I think this is the right one, 1104 Circle M. And I don't know if he still lives there. This is just where he lived on the day of the raid. Okay. It looks like this was June 2022. So no, he doesn't live here anymore. But this was the apartment right here. Now, I don't know if yes, I can. Look at that. Oh, a little too far. So this here, I don't know if this was a light, and I don't know if this was a light, but neither of these were illuminated. This light was not illuminated. This light was not illuminated. This light was not illuminated. And this light was not illuminated. There's also a light up here, and there's a light down here in the center. And I don't know if these are security lights or just like porch lights. Ah, dang it. Go back. But this is the only light that was illuminated, and it's against this back wall here. Okay. It's not like on the outside edge. It's inside underneath the awning, tucked in that little corner up there is where it is. So, you've got this area here where the building juts out, and it juts out a little over 6 feet, according to one of the witnesses' testimony. From the door to the edge right down here is a little over 6 feet. Now, there was some discrepancy about all his measurements because apparently 2 feet and 5 inches is 31 inches, according to the police officer that took measurements. I'll let you do the math on that. 2 feet, 5 inches equals 31 inches. Only in Common Core math, maybe. I don't know. So anyway, this is where the stack happens. This is where they're raking out the window. They broke out the window and raked out the window, the blinds there. Okay. So if you've got a light back here, and again, this is my observation. This hasn't been entered into testimony yet, although it has been questioned a little bit and brought out. You've got this, and I wish this light. You know, I guess if you look at it from above, let me try that. Let me see if I can go back to oh wait, here we go. Yeah, here we go. So you can see it's a square thing there. Let me put on the, there you go. I don't think I'm going to be able to make that point from here. Let me try. It won't let me zoom in anymore. But the light, I'm going to estimate the light is approximately here. Okay, see where my cursor is? That's approximately where the light is on the upstairs balcony. Right about here at the back part of that porch. So you have to, and there is something I can do here. Watch this. I'm going to try and there we go, measure a distance here. So, and don't worry about the measurements. I just want you to see the line. So here's where I start it. And then here's where the wall is, right? So you've got this angle. And if you drag this angle out, okay, this is where your light is shining. If anything is illuminated, it's everything over here. Okay, because the light can't see around. It can't see around corners. And this is a brick wall right here where this wall juts out. Now, from above, it just looks like a square. But if you remember on the street view, this wall juts out quite, like I said, about six feet. So from this to this should be about 6 feet. Let me see if I got that right. Oh, see, it's actually a little further back. So I'm gonna put my light back 6 feet, according to the officer. Okay, it's actually 6 1/4 feet. So that's a little bit less. So now I've got an even bigger angle here from the light to the corner. Now, Marvin Guy's window is right here, which means it's not illuminated. And if you've got somebody outside your window, you can't see that. Now, if the officers are stacked up on this sidewalk, which the evidence was that they were stacked up outside this sidewalk, that Marvin Guy should have been able to see at least the people on the north part of this line, right? On the north part of this line. And they're trying to claim that from his vantage point, and they don't know where Marvin Guy was inside his bedroom. This is The bedroom here, I don't know how big the bedroom is exactly. And I don't know where, you know, if Marvin Guy is right here. So let's do another measurement from here. Let's just say he's in this corner of the bedroom, right? And, oh, okay. I guess I've got to click. There we go. You know, he's only able to see from the window likely about anything above this. So now you've got your vectors here from this line, and I wish I could do two lines at a time, this line and this line. And that's if he's right there. Now, if Marvin's on this side of the bedroom, this line moves up because of where the window is on what he can see. So he can't see these people here because they're obscured by the wall. He can see these people here because they're not obscured by the wall, and they're in the lighted area where they're illuminated. Okay, I hope I make sense on that. That's probably a little too much. Oh, what the heck? How come I was able to measure that? I don't know where I'm getting all these lines from. Anyway, let's go back to this. All right, let me get back to the apartment here. Did I already pass it? Oh, yeah, I did. Come on. One more. There we go. Okay, so here's the apartment. Oh, wait. Am I on the wrong side of the road? Oh, remember. Oh, no, I was on the wrong side of the road. Sorry. Let me get back over here. I was looking backwards. All right, so here's the apartment. All right, let's go back to the testimony. And I'm going to try and explain to you. So like I said, you've got this light. You've got the wall right here. So, you know, this window here, and it's only, I think the window was 2 feet, 5 inches, or as the detective said, that means 31 inches, right? So 29 inches equals 31 inches. But this is a 31 inch or 29 inch, depending on which measurement you want to believe, wide window. So depending on where you are, you've actually got a kind of narrow field of view from inside. And it depends on where you are inside the bedroom there. Let's see. So what was he saying? Okay, so the window is still obscured. And again, I don't have the evidence. I don't have the evidentiary pictures. But the video, the photos that they showed of the aftermath show that there's still a whole bunch of blinds obscuring the window there. And when the officer pulls up, there's even more. There are even more blinds in the window when the officer pulls up after the raid has already started and shots have been fired. So it was even less than the final pictures that they showed. All right. I think that was pretty much what that officer's testimony was mainly about, was the fact that he heard 2 sets of gunfire. Oh, good. And then the defense attorney, did bring out the lighting issue. He did bring up the fact that there's a wall there, and the fact that nobody knows where Marvin Guy was inside the room, and that it was upstairs, not downstairs. And that the police officers were wearing black and camouflage gear. So it's dark. It's dark outside. There's camouflage gear, and they're wearing black stuff. But yet we're supposed to know that because who else wears black at night when they're breaking into a building? Burglars. So that makes perfect sense that officers would wear black and camouflage. All right, the next witness was a nurse, and really because she had to leave, they brought her testimony forward. All it was she collected the DNA. So there was that, and after her testimony, a juror was excused, and that's when the makeup of the 12-person jury went from 1 black individual to 2 black individuals. The only 2 black individuals that were in the 16-person jury panel, and now both of them are in the main jury because one of the alternates was a black male, and he's now an actual juror and not an alternate. So next was Brian Goodsby. He was in the stack. No, he wasn't in the. Yeah, he was the. No, I'm sorry. He met with help to collect the DNA evidence. So nothing really interesting there. He did all the measurements and all that kind of stuff of the wall, and that's where the defense brings up the fact that this guy. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that this guy, the measurements were all wrong. Because 2 feet 5 inches does not equal 31 inches, and then all the other ones were like that as well. You know, it was like it was 7 feet and so many inches, and then it was his calculation in inches was a total of 94.5 inches. But the feet and inches only added up to 92 inches. So whatever. Next up was Bradley Blinden. He was a KPD officer. He's with DPS now, but he was with KPD for about 14 years. And he took other measurements as well. There was an issue, and so this was just all measurements. It was testimony about, you know, how far is it from the door to the edge of this wall? How far is it from the top of this porch to the bottom? How far is it from this edge of the window to here, this edge of the window to here, the bottom of the window to the ground, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just testimony about measurements. I think what the state is going to try and do with these measurements is say, look, these guys were so close. He should have known better. Marvin should have been able to see these people. It's clear as day. And look how far away these people are. All right. They're not that far away. Next was David Daniels, and he's retired KPD. This was one of the injured individuals. Now, before he came out, and I'm sure a lot of people that were monitoring and sitting in the courtroom just to watch the trial didn't really understand what was going on. But what was going to happen was this individual, David Daniels, he's former Army, did 24 years in the Army, and then he went to KPD and did like 15 years in KPD. And it happened. He was in, during this raid, he was on all that. So they did what's called a motion in limine. And generally, when you've got a big case like this and you've got hundreds of exhibits, the prosecutors and the defense will get together and they will admit evidence. In other words, the state will say, all right, here's my list of evidence. Is there anything here you object to? Yeah, I object to 7, 8, 130, 920, whatever. Okay, these are the ones I object to. And then the ones that the defense doesn't object to, they get pre-admitted. So you don't have to go through the nonsense of admitting evidence into trial on those particular issues. It's just pre-admitted, and it saves time, saves money, and it gets the case through. But there were 2 exhibits, 7 and 8, that the defense objected to. And one of the reasons was because the evidence was a picture of the whiteboard of the pre-raid planning. Okay. And that when they're about to go in there, they do their run through and their pre-raid planning on the board. They've got, okay, who's on the vehicle entry team, who's on the main entry team, who's on the rear entry team, who's on the window B&R, the brake and rake, who's doing traffic, all that kind of stuff. Right. But one of the things that is on this board was a notation that Marvin Lewis guy, and it's got his height, weight, color, all that kind of stuff on there. But that he was armed with a 9mm and a 45 ACP. And there was the wording on there that says always armed. And anybody that knows anything about the legal system knows that hearsay is not admissible. And there was a concern that, of course, this statement, always armed. Well, how do people know that? Someone had to tell them that Lewis or Marvin is always armed. And that is an out of court statement, which means it's hearsay. It's somebody said something, right? Because I guarantee you that officers aren't going up to Marvin every single day, every single minute, and checking him to see if he's armed at any given day or time. So somebody told the cops that he was always armed. So to get around the hearsay problems, what they did was they were only admitting this evidence to prove the mental state of the officers going in on this raid. And the mental state was, this guy's possibly armed, therefore, or he's always armed, therefore we need to do it no knock raid, because if we do a knock raid, you know, we're probably going to die. I know the irony. And so that's sort of what this, there was a little bit of debate about when this witness came up and we brought up this picture. They had to remind the witness, hey, you can talk about why always armed is up there, and it's to show the mental state of everyone involved and why they were doing a no-knock raid, but you can't talk about where that information came from, because that would be hearsay. And so they stayed away from that. They didn't really focus on that too much. And one of the defense arguments, and it's a great argument, was that if they focused on this fact that Marvin is always armed, that the prejudice of that evidence would outweigh the evidence, you know, the admissibility of the evidence, right? The purpose of it. And even if evidence is relevant, and even if evidence is admissible, if admitting it would create undue prejudice, then there are times where that evidence cannot be admitted. Okay, I'm not going to get into all the legal aspects of that. Just look into hearsay exceptions and all that kind of stuff. All right, so so they barely touched on it. So it wasn't. I would say that my humble opinion is that it was not prejudicial, because it was only mentioned almost in passing. It wasn't something that was the focus of the evidence. Now, I know how attorneys work. They're kind of hoping that even though they didn't focus on it, maybe the jury saw it. Okay. And they're going to have access to these maps and these pictures and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they'll see it again. Even if their intent was to bring it up just to show the mental state, the fact of the matter is it could have been prejudicial, possibly. Let's see. It's just a way that attorneys work around the system. So David talks about how the no-knock raid is designed to capitalize on the element of surprise. Let that sink in. A no-knock raid is designed to capitalize on the element of surprise. So they know for a fact that the person whose apartment they're about to break into, Marvin Lewis Guy, they know for a fact that this apartment, they're going to try and surprise the individual. That's what a no-knock raid is for. Which is weird. If you're going to surprise someone, you don't want to tell them about it. So how can there be an ambush if you're doing a no-knock raid to enhance the element of surprise? So there's already, I mean, and we're just in the first few witnesses, there's already a lot of information that is contradictory in the state's case. He talks about the fact that they wore solid black uniforms. The marksmen wear camouflage. Why? Witness's own words, Officer Daniels, where no one can see them. That's why they wear the camouflage. That's why they wear the black. Just let that sink in. All right. So I talked about that. Daniel says, so what they do is they use they use the first ram, and what's supposed to happen is at first sound, and that first sound was supposed to be the ram hitting the door the first time, everybody would execute the search warrant simultaneously. So they would ram the door as soon as the breach team at the window, let me bring this back up. So they would ram the door as soon as the breach team at the window heard the first sound of the ram at the door, they would breach the window. And at the same time, the vehicle team, and this isn't the vehicle, I'm just saying, wherever the vehicle is parked, I don't know. The vehicle team would breach the vehicle. So you've got 3 raids going on at once: the door, the window, and here. And this is supposed to be a surprise. Remember the element of surprise. So, and then Everyone is shouting. As soon as that first ram goes through, this is his testimony, everyone is shouting at the same time. Everyone is shouting police, warrant, whatever it is that they're shouting, right? I guarantee you that they're probably not doing it in unison. And if you've already been stunned by a stun grenade and you've already been jerked awake and by someone breaking in your window, and there's the element of surprise because it's 5:40 in the morning and it's dark outside, and there's a whole bunch of shouting. Do you think at that moment you can isolate the words of each individual officer when everyone is shouting something? Those words can be police, warrant is what they said. You know, we're yelling police, warrant, get on the ground, come out with your hands up, whatever it is that they're shouting. Of course, there's no body cam, so nobody knows exactly when the shouting started, whether the shouting even existed, or what they were saying. Let's see. There were some, says light lit them up in the stat. So the light, so what he said was that this light that's up here against the back part of the wall lit them up in the stack. And they were lit up in the stack down this sidewalk right here. On the right side of this sidewalk is where they were stacked up. Oh, good golly. Why am I doing that? Every time I touch it, it moves out. See if I can get in there again. There we go. All right. So they're stacked up right here on this sidewalk. I'm going to try not to touch anything. Because this door was barricaded after the third ram. So they hit it. It opened up a few inches and then it shut back. And he doesn't know whether it actually latched or if it just, went back. They hit it the second time. It opened about a foot and then it shut again. But they could see that there was something on the other side, and it was a lazy boy chair that was pushing the door back shut. So then someone shouted secondary, which means secondary entry, which would have been the back door. Okay. Now, there was no testimony today at all, and I don't know if there will be. Maybe tomorrow there will be, but because this is the front breach right now. There was no testimony about whether the back door was barricaded. If you're anticipating, or if you're going to ambush officers and they're going to break into your house, wouldn't you barricade both doors? Why not? Why just the front door if that was the intent of the lazy boy chair? Because what he said was, the testimony from Daniels was, well, here's what an ambush is you stop. And this is really what a military ambush is. The goal of a military ambush is to stop. You first stop the enemy convoy or whoever it is, whatever element it is that you're ambushing. And you do that by either attacking the lead element or creating a circumstance in which the lead element can no longer move forward, right? Which stops every element behind that lead element. Or you attack the rear element in the hopes that everybody stops to turn around and assist with the attack from behind. Now, there are ways that soldiers, and I'm not going to get into military tactics, but there are ways that military soldiers deal with ambushes in different ways, okay? But he's trying to say, they're trying to say that this is all nefarious because Marvin Lewis Guy is this brilliant tactician, who understands how to ambush a SWAT team. And so the reason he barricaded that front door was to stop the stack so that he could ambush them from the flank, right? And once that third ram went through the door, that's when allegedly Marvin Guy shot through the window. And that's when Daniels was hit. Daniels was hit in the helmet, right where the NVG mount is, and it broke the NVG mount. And apparently he didn't know this until later, but a bullet pierced his drop leg holster, hit his thigh, but didn't penetrate either his uniform or his thigh. So it was just a big welt that he got from the bullet that penetrated down there. And apparently, like 357 says, this guy is a tactical genius because he understands how to ambush. Now, by the way, For a successful ambush to occur, you have to understand and know the movements of the enemy. You have to know that they're going to come down a particular corridor. You have to know that they're going to be going at a particular time. You have to know their strategy of how they are going to move at the moment that you are going to attack them. Now, a lot of ambushes will happen at what's called a bottleneck, where there's a really thin area to get through. And so units have to consolidate and squeeze through. They can't spread out. And so you've got a higher concentration of elements in a much smaller area. And so a bottleneck is always a great place for an ambush. And then you also have dog legs or turns, which is another great place for an ambush, because you can make an L shape and do an L-shape ambush where you're attacking people essentially from two different sides of using the same number of people. So apparently Marvin Lewis Guy, the tactical genius that he is, was able to, one, know exactly which door that, yes, the fatal funnel, knew exactly which door they were going to come in through, and when they were going to do that, and at what time, and all that kind of stuff. Here's my thing. If you really wanted to ambush, so on the other side of this door is a hallway. There's a hallway here. 357 in the comments mentioned the word fatal funnel. If you really wanted to ambush these officers, you would let them breach the door and then shoot them as they're coming down the hallway, because they're at this point they're contained. You've got essentially a tunnel down which your target is coming, and you don't have to worry about traversing your rounds to hit each individual target. You just keep shooting straight, because you're going to hit those targets because they're all stacked up one behind the other. So if he really wanted, if he was this genius tactician and ambusher, why didn't he just let them breach? Why even put the lazy boy there to keep them from coming down this fatal funnel? And here's another thing, right? If you know you're about to be ambushed, why would you even be home? If he knows that they're going to execute a warrant on him, on Marvin Guy, why would he even set up this ambush, unless he had a suicide pact? But we know he doesn't, because the second gun, the 45 that was not used, was never picked up. It was never fired. It was left under his pillow. And I'll get to that later. So it wasn't that he had a death wish, that he thought he was going to do a death by cop ambush, right, where he knew he was going to die. So if he truly meant this to be an ambush, why even go through the trouble of setting up a barricade on the door? Why not just not show up, right? Why not just go and hide out somewhere so that they can't ambush you, so they can't execute the warrant on you? It just doesn't make any sense at all, this whole idea of an ambush. And then, of course, you just add in the fact that I think it was this apartment, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been this one or this one, because this one was empty, so it might have been this one too. But one of these apartments here had been burgled the night before. Someone broke into the house and stole a bunch of crap. And at the time of this incident, I believe this apartment was empty. And no, so if it was empty, that's not the one that was broken into. So it had to be this one. I was going to say maybe they moved out, but I guarantee you they didn't move out within 24 hours. So I think it was this one that was broken into. Either way, I mean, whether it was this one, it doesn't matter. The point is, if you live in a dangerous place and you know that there are burglaries occurring in your neighborhood, maybe when you go to bed, especially when it happened the night prior, maybe when you go to bed, you want to make it harder for a burglar to get into your house. You think? Because the ambush thing doesn't make any sense. All right, I'm just thinking like a defense attorney. Let me get back to the witnesses. So everyone's shouting, door was barricaded. After the third man, he heard shots from the bedroom. Now, there was a burst through the window. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead here. So he's in the stack. Here's shots. The next thing he remembers, because he was shot in the helmet and apparently it dazed him, he's waking up right here. And let me see if I can move a little bit. Dang it. I need a better, there we go. There's a better angle. So this is where Daniels is shot, somewhere around here. Okay. He has no idea what is happening. He kind of blacks out. But somehow he awakens and comes to his senses, and he's over here underneath the porch, underneath this window. And when he comes to his senses, he's laying on his side. He sits up straight, and then he starts firing into this window. Now, this window has blinds on it. This window has blinds on it. All he can see is what he said was the shadow of a male. This is going to be important later. There is a theory out there, and it's not a bad theory. And I think the state, or I'm sorry, the defense will probably end up making this argument. And I know Marvin has mentioned this, and it's been mentioned elsewhere, that Dinwiddie, the officer that was killed, was shot by one of his own men. Now, the testimony today from Daniels was that he was shot somewhere over here on the sidewalk, and then he doesn't know what happened, but he ended up laying down, or he was waking up or came to his senses. I think his words were he came to his senses right about here. And then he realized, oh crap, this guy's about to finish me off because I'm right underneath this window. I'm right underneath this living room window. This is the living room behind this window. And he could see apparently a couch that was right here. And then on the wall on the other side was a television. And even though the blinds were closed, because of the angle that they were closed in and the fact that he was down here, he was able to kind of see up through some of the slats. And that's how he was able to notice that there was a couch and a television inside there. And then that there was an individual walking in there. But he says he just knew it was a male figure. Ladies and gentlemen, every person on this stack, every person on this team, the SWAT team, was a male. Now, what was not said, and I took note of this, there's no timeline. There's no timeline or idea of the time between when Daniels was shot here and when he woke up here. Nope, that was not brought out as evidence. There was also no evidence brought out about, well, wait a minute. There were, I think, 9 people on this stack. Where are the other 8 people when you're sitting here shooting into this room? Are they inside? Are they outside? I bet you they're inside, because this is the point where essentially they breach. So here's a guy that is just shooting into a window without identifying a target. He's seen a male shadow. What he says is a male shadow. And we haven't said so far where Dinwiddie was shot. Now, on the pictures that were provided, the evidence photos of the scene after the raid, there's a lot of blood right here. Okay, now this blood was not Daniel's blood, the witness that came up today, the one that was shot in the helmet and in the hip. It wasn't his blood, but there's someone's blood, and there's a little bit of a smear here as well. So there's a pool on the, there's a smear right here and a pool, and then there's a pool right here in the grass, and then there's more blood over here on this side, a pool of blood on this side. We don't know yet whose blood that was. I'm guessing it might be at some point they're going to claim that it was Dinwiddie's blood, I think. I don't know. They haven't said anything. He did say that he helped to drag Dinwiddie over here. Or over here, excuse me. And that's probably why there's a pool of blood here and there's a pool of blood here, because Daniels wasn't, there was no blood drawn there. So the evidence hasn't said yet, but this is what I think. I think he was brought down here, probably dragged over here from the sidewalk. I don't know how he got to the sidewalk, and then moved. And I think Daniels was one of them that helped to move them. Move Dinwiddie, the killed officer, over here, because there was another pool of blood over here. All right. So the timeline's really messed up, and the state didn't get into it. And I have to wonder, why not? why wouldn't the state ask? Because here's what I'm thinking, right? If I know for a fact as the prosecutor that at the time that Daniels is shooting into this window, everybody is out here, then you can pretty much surmise that the male figure that he sees through this window is not one of his own officers. Keep in mind now, they'd already called for secondary. Remember, after that third battering ram, after the second one, they called for a secondary, and then the evidence was that someone in the stack said, try it again, hit the door again a third time. And again, that's when the shooting started. But they had already called over the radio for secondary, which means somebody's breaching in the rear, in the back part. Now, Dinwiddie was not in the rear team. Dinwiddie, the officer that was killed, is in the front stack here, going through the front door. But here's a guy that's shooting in, and the question was not asked. And actually, we're going to get in. The defense hasn't had an opportunity to question this witness yet, because it was 4:30. I can tell you exactly what time it was. It was 4:25 when the state ended its case in chief with this witness, or its main case with this witness. And so the defense said, hey, we've got a lot of cross-examination on this witness. So why don't we just end early, because that way we can get it all done in one shot, no pun intended, instead of starting it now and then ending it, in 30 minutes or an hour, and then restarting it again tomorrow. That way there's a good flow. And so the judge ended before the defense can get into there. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, because tomorrow there should be evidence, and I think the defense will bring this out. I hope he does. He's a very smart guy. Will bring out the evidence that, okay, well, where were these guys when you're here shooting in the window? Okay, the state, and I think the reason the state didn't bring it up is because these guys were in the house. And remember, there's going to be a theory, and I don't know if it's going to be brought up in the defense's case in chief, but there's going to be a defensive theory that it wasn't even Marvin Guy that shot the officer. It was one of their own people. And that's why the state didn't ask, okay, when you were shooting in this window, where was your stack at? Because Daniels didn't say where everybody else was. He didn't say how he got there. He doesn't know how he got there. But obviously, if the state were to ask that question and him say, well, I think they were inside the apartment, well, heck, they just did the defense's job for him. So I'm hoping that comes up tomorrow. This was kind of funny. Testimony. And good. I was trying to keep this at about an hour. One of what Daniels testified to, he was talking about the fact that he had his Sig Sauer 40 caliber handgun, and he had his H&K 416 AR style rifle. Okay, it was an H&K 416 is what he was carrying that day. His rifle is fully automatic. He shot a 3-round burst into the window several times. And then he was talking about, so the state asked him whether those bullets could go through brick. And he says that bullets can go through this is a 24-year veteran. Now, keep in mind, he was an Apache mechanic. Okay. The witness was an Apache mechanic in the Army. So, it wasn't like he used guns for a living. And he testifies that AR bullets can shoot through a brick wall. Okay. A 223 AR bullet can shoot through a brick wall. Anyway, that was his testimony. All right. Some questions I wrote. Did you know if anyone else was in the video or in the building? Where was the rest of the team while you were on the ground? He pulled Dinwiddie from where? Where did you pull Dinwiddie from? They never brought that out there. And here's another thing is, where are you taught to shoot? And he says, shoot center mass. This was something also, keep in mind, this is, the state, and I think the reason the state didn't ask, okay, when you were shooting in this window, where was your stack at? Because Daniels didn't say where everybody else was. He didn't know how he got there. So This is a police officer's testimony. Okay. First of all, it's a police officer's testimony, a retired police officer, a veteran, that AR-15 bullets can go through a brick wall. This is also the testimony. And anybody that understands, and I'm going to tell you this as a defense attorney, that what I'm about to tell you, don't ever say to anyone, okay? Unless you want to get charged with murder. But he was asked, when you were in training and you were taught to shoot, where were you taught to aim? Oh, we were taught to aim center mass. And I think what he's trying to do is bring out the fact that, and he says, well, why is that? Why do you aim center mass? And the testimony was that, well, when you aim center mass, that's where the main organs are. And it's, well, he says, when you're shooting at someone, you're trying to kill them. That was the question from the state, the prosecutor. When you're shooting at someone, it's because you're shooting at someone, you're trying to kill them, right? Response, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, wrong. Now, that might be the result, okay? But I want you to know that as a defense attorney, if you ever have to shoot someone in self-defense, you are shooting to stop the attacker. Okay? You are shooting to stop the attacker, not to kill them, to stop the attacker. Now, generally, the positive benefit of stopping the attacker is that he can no longer attack another person at all, ever, because he's dead. Okay? Now, that's a great benefit to shooting to stop the attacker, but you never shoot to kill. The only people that shoot to kill are the military. Our job in the military is to kill the enemy. Kill them, not stop them. Kill them. The job of self-defense is to stop the attacker. The job of the police in using a firearm is to stop the attacker. Okay? It's to stop the threat. You never shoot to kill. Take it for what it is. It's a great side benefit that generally people die when you shoot them center mass or in the head or wherever you shoot them. But that's not the purpose of shooting. And that was the testimony of this police officer. Now, that was the end of the state's questioning of this witness. Tomorrow morning, the defense gets a crack at this, and I can't wait to hear the testimony because I want to see the defense poke all the holes that I just poked into that. And it's going to be interesting to hear, to plug in all these holes. There are just so many holes from this testimony, and I can't help but think that the prosecutor intentionally didn't ask these questions. And he's not required to. I get it. You've got a case. You're there to get this guy convicted. You need to convince the jury that this guy is guilty. Your job is not to give the defense, other than exculpatory information, evidence, that's for the defense to pull out. The defense is supposed to pull out all these little holes that I brought in, okay? But if there's anything that you learned today, if there's anything that I want you to get out of this video, it's that one, AR-15 bullets cannot fire generally through brick walls. Now, I guess it depends on the size of the brick or how thick the bricks are. But I'm sorry, AR-15s don't shoot through brick walls, okay? Unless they're really crappily built brick walls. Second, you do not shoot to kill. You shoot to stop the threat. And it bothers me as an American, as a patriot, and as a defense attorney, as a civil rights attorney, that we have officers going around saying that the purpose of shooting someone is to kill them. We have officers that believe they are soldiers, that they're facing an enemy out there, not suspects. not people who are innocent until proven guilty. See, on a battlefield, when we're out there and we're pointing our guns at somebody, we're not out there pointing our guns at someone and wondering, are they innocent or are they guilty? We're out there going, that's the enemy. I need to take them out. I need to destroy them. I need to kill them. That's the point of a military, is to kill people. All right. It's not to go out there and get due process and justice and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, law enforcement's job is to protect due process and to protect lives. And you don't do that when you shoot to kill. Now, I'm not saying, because, there are these arguments by a lot of people on, why didn't you shoot him in the leg? Why didn't you shoot him in the arm? Why'd you have to, shoot him in the chest? And because he's going to die. Well, look, that's how you stop the threat. You don't stop the threat by shooting him in the leg. Plus, it's very hard to do, especially in a moving target. You shoot center mass because of several reasons. One, that's the largest part of the body. It's the easiest part of the body to hit. It also happens to be the part of the body where all the internal organs are located, and therefore you're going to stop the attack if you can get one of those organs. Okay? If you can shoot him in the head, well, again, there's a big organ up there that is going to be affected, or several organs, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, whatever, your ears. But there are organs up there. But you shoot center mass because that's how you're going to stop the threat, either by severely wounding them or just wounding them or killing them. But that's a side effect of shooting them in the chest, in the center mass area. It's not shoot to kill. And it bothers me. Is Killeen PD and are these police academies training cops to kill suspects? Or are they training cops to stop threats? That should be, no cop should be testifying in open court that when they fire their weapon, they're firing their weapon to kill that person. That's what soldiers do. That's what the military does. That's when you have an enemy. That's when you have someone that your job is to kill. Police officers' job is to collect evidence and suspects. Now, if it just so happens that you're in a gunfire fight with somebody and you shoot them, even then, even when the person is shooting at you, your job is not to kill the person shooting at you as a cop. It's to stop the threat. All right, I made that point. I've made that point. But I want everyone to understand it's an important point, especially for you and I as defendants. If we're going to be a defendant, okay, we need to understand that we are not shooting, and you need to have in your head, when you shoot somebody, you're not shooting to kill them. Now, there might be that hope that, I hope I kill him so that I don't have to, so this guy can't hurt someone else. But the reason behind you shooting them is to stop the threat. And yes, that is a good conversation that needs to be had between law enforcement and the military. Okay, law enforcement, the military, us soldiers, keep in mind, I'm retired Army, combat veteran. I don't care when that enemy soldier over there is shooting at me, whether or not I need to collect evidence of his death. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me how he died. It doesn't matter to me where he died. It doesn't matter to me why he died. As long as he's a threat, and my job is to kill him, because the military and us soldiers, we are the pieces, the pawns in this political game called war. I don't like it. I hate war. I will never support another war. I don't support what's going on in Ukraine with our involvement. I understand why Ukraine is fighting back, and they have every right to. I wholly support when your land is invaded, you fight back. I do not support America sending soldiers to other countries. Now, I support why we went into Afghanistan, and I even support initially why we went into Iraq. I can't get into a lot of that. Just know that, I used to be in intelligence. Okay, there are reasons we went in there. There aren't reasons why we had to stay and continue to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. But having been in war twice, having actively engaged in combat once, now the second time I was just a sitting duck because I was on Kandahar, never left the base, never had to pick up my gun to shoot back, just got mortared a bunch of times. But our job is to kill. And it doesn't matter I'm not looking for whether or not that person is guilty of a crime. I just know that they represent the country that we're at war with, okay? Or that we were sent to fight. We were at war. I don't support American involvement in any other country in war anymore because I've seen my buddies killed in combat. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm really getting off target here, but the fact of the matter is I don't want police officers taking on a warrior combat soldier mentality. That is not what they're there for. And the minute that we admit or accept that the police are out there as a combat entity whose job is to take out the enemy, then we've lost due process. We've lost constitutional rights. We've lost a rule of law in this country that has been around since we were founded. No longer do any of your rights matter when you are looked at as an enemy, because an enemy can be killed without consequences. I mean, unless, you execute a prisoner or an enemy combatant who's surrendering. Obviously there are rules of war. Okay, I'm talking about when you're engaged in war, you're killing the enemy, and you don't want law enforcement in this country looking at suspects as the enemy. You don't want law enforcement looking at citizens as the enemy. And it sounds like that's what they're being taught. I got to go. You guys take care. Be safe, be free. I'll be back hopefully tomorrow with day 2 of this trial. And so hopefully some good news on how the defense is going to poke some holes into today's witnesses. Y'all take care. Be safe, be free. I'll see you next time. Bye.